Everyone, today I want to talk to you about mistake number 6. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So it's a fresh but humid Thursday morning, and this is all about past experiences in business, property, investing, which has led me onto my mistake series and the mistakes I've made through my journey and what you can do differently to try and avoid making the same mistakes that I've made. So this one is a really biggie because it nearly wiped me out. Now, there's a common theme here. It just shows how fragile my businesses have been in the past. That on numerous occasions, a pretty, okay, it's a significant mistake, but my business has been fragile enough for a single mistake to being able to almost wipe my business out. So there's obviously things you can do. I'll talk about what I'm doing with the profit process to kind of make your business a lot more future-proof, more sustainable, and more based on predictable profits rather than, flying by the seat of your pants, which so many people do, unfortunately. Okay, so what do I mean by this mistake? Okay, so I'll go back probably five, maybe 6 years even. We were killing it in the HMO business, not just the HMO business, the property business. This was at our peak. We were bringing in just shy of 20 grand a month clear. Okay, so we were doing really well. The issue was that we were obviously the team morale wasn't at the highest, and I could have done some funky things with profit sharing stuff to perhaps help with morale. But it wasn't just about morale in terms of monetary aspect. It was also to do with the issues in the business model. We had 96 properties at the time, crazy number of tenants. We had 40 odd HMOs, so there were probably just shy of 200 HMO tenants, let alone another 50 or so. We probably had 250 to 275 tenants. We had a team of I think 9 people at the time on various levels of pay, etc. But the issue was that all the money we were making, it was a really labour intensive process. Not for me as much. Well, I said it like it was because I hadn't systemised my business as much then. But we were making really good money. The money wasn't worth it because it was taking over our lives. And you think of all these tenants, they're probably quite a difficult tenant profile to manage anyway. All the maintenance issues, all the fire schedule works. It was just an absolute head explosion for everybody. Everybody was doing crazy hours. Yes, the money was good, but the hours and what it was taking its toll on everybody in the business wasn't worth it. So this is where I was on the lookout for a solution as an entrepreneur. I've talked about problems, why you should love them, and the concept of the more problems you solve and as efficiently as you can, the more successful you'll be. So I was finding a solution to this big problem. Part of my solution was to find the process to systemize the business, which I found a couple of years later. The solution I found here, I thought was a turnkey solution, and it was wrong. Now, I was randomly added to somebody's marketing list for a rent guarantee company. Okay, they're based in the northwest of the country. I'm not going to name names here, but they were a rental guarantee insurance company, and they were backed by one of the key opinion leaders in the insurance market for lettings. So they were a kosher business. Okay, and they approached me and said, just a mail shot, and I just responded to them. We can guarantee all your rents. We'll collect all the money, any arrears are guaranteed, so you'll always get your rental payments, and your legal fees all covered, right the way through to eviction. So it's me thinking, holy moly, what's the fee for this? 3.5%, so 3% plus that. So it was of the rent run, which is scandalously cheap. And so instantly I thought, well, I need to have a meeting with these guys. So I met with them. Now it was the key opinion leader in lettings insurance's son that was running this business. So he was younger, very ambitious, and was obviously chasing the deal because he saw the size of my portfolio. Now he positioned it to me that, yeah, you can do it, no problem. They work, because I have a lot of tenants that were claiming benefits. It's a different market dealing with, at the time it was housing benefit rather than universal credit. And you have to understand those processes, and that you don't get any warning, but a payment can go into suspension, you need to sort it out. So I went through this process numerous times with them, and they said, yeah, we deal with other councils across the country, we know this process. I went up and visited them, saw their infrastructure, big call centre, professional organisation. So after several months worth of negotiations, we signed this over. And the issue was I was basically relinquishing control, because, okay, there was a vetting process to get tenants approved, which was fine, and we agreed to that. But as soon as they were approved and the tenancy was in place, we were getting paid. So we were still earning similar levels of income, but literally no management. Okay, if there was a maintenance issue reported, we'd pick up on that. There was no tenant management. There was no chasing up arrears, which was a big part of the previous business model. And we thought, this is happy days. Just to give you an indication, two of the key metrics we used to use, we still do use, in the property business was, a lot of people use occupancy rate. We don't bother with that, because when you have a lot of benefit tenants, the processing times to get them into payment and everything, we had a metric called paid occupancy rate. So if you would also often get a tenant that would move into a room, you might not be in payment for 3 months as their claim was being processed. So that they would see it as a cash flow void, as in the room wasn't void, but the cash flow coming from it was. So these are metrics that we kind of prefabricated and made up that served our purpose. To put it in perspective, we needed around about somewhere in the region of 60% paid occupancy rate to break even as a business. So there was big margin when we got everybody paying. However, we never ever had everybody paying, because it was the nature of the business. You'd always have arrears and issues that you needed to solve. But we were often our sweet spot was kind of 85% to 90% paid occupancy rate. And that's the levels we were making the 20 grand clear. So we'd lost visibility of this, because as far as we're concerned, we went from obviously there was still a few, I'm just going to pass someone. Morning. So we went from, obviously there were a few people that we had existing arrears with, they wouldn't be taken under the insurance because they had existing arrears. So those aside, everybody else was 100% paying occupancy rate. So we were actually making more money to begin with through the rent guarantee insurance. So it was an absolute no-brainer. But I always felt, it just felt like it sounds a bit too good to be true. So, but I thought, I've done my due diligence. I've been pretty thorough with this, and I still stand by it. If I went back today, I would have still made that same mistake, because I didn't take it lightly. But the one thing that did sit with me was, this does sound too good to be true. And it definitely was, because the agreement lasted for 9 months. But what was happening was with the rent guarantee companies, because their number was to do with all tenant payments, etc. So we didn't get all the calls or anything like that. So we had very little visibility of who was actually paying and who wasn't. We only had visibility of the money that the rent guarantee company were paying us, which was so high. Now the issue with that and losing that control, with little did we know, but obviously tenants were still falling into suspensions and falling into arrears, and the rent guarantee company, although were collecting what they could, they were going down eviction processes, and we were getting tenants evicted right the way through, and we were replacing them. But little did we know the level of arrears that had stocked up. Bear in mind, we were at kind of 85 to 90% paid occupancy rate when we knew that we needed 60% to be break-even point. When it fell flat, when the insurance underwriter pulled it and said, we're losing far too much money on this, it was handed back to us in a pretty abrupt and unprofessional manner. But the scary thing is our paid occupancy rate was down at about 44% of the whole portfolio. So what that actually meant was we were hemorrhaging around 10 grand a month in terms of just to keep the portfolio afloat. And the one thing that happens with the portfolio is only really recently, it still hasn't fully recovered from that. we've built it back up and we're back into decent profit. It's not anywhere near the heights that we were at before, but it's taken so long to recover it because when we were growing the portfolio, it was easy to maintain that level because you're just adding, getting people moved in. As people move out, you're filling them, but you're always at that level. When you drop down to a really low level, you've got tenant churn to factor in there. So as you're solving issues, you're getting more that are kind of building up. And as a result of that, the progress it takes, the amount of work that it takes to get your business back to the dizzy heights that they were before, it took years. But that nearly wiped us out because I think I had to plug 150 grand into the business. I did have to plug 150 grand into the business to keep it afloat. It's a huge sum of money, and I haven't extracted that bit of money back out of the business at this point in time. But I had to do that. Morning. I had to do that to also make it to the business survive. Otherwise, I would have been wiped out. If I didn't have that money, I'd have been bankrupt. So that was a real stern lesson of how fragile my business was, but how I put all my eggs in this basket. And the big learning curve from this is that I would never hand over my full income stream, no matter what the guarantee was. Again, I would always hold back enough to ensure that even in the worst situation, I would have, even in the worst scenarios, I would have my fixed costs covered. So I wouldn't have to put my hand in my pocket. So I'd always make sure I at least get that under control. And I might take a risk on part of it, but I would certainly protect my position to hedge my bets against something like this happening. But I don't regret it. I could easily regret it because it's been such a costly exercise for me, and one which literally put me back years and years in terms of the recovery. Like I say, that's 5-6 years ago, and we still really haven't fully recovered because although we've recovered, we then had to take on some extra debt to fund the situation we're in, and obviously we have to pay that back. So our net position is worse. It gets better all the time because we're paying all the debt and everything down, and as we're reducing our level of gearing, etc. But yeah, that was a really low point, and that was kind of when my first business partnership failure, the cracks were starting to appear, a little bit of stress on the scenario, and that's what was happening. So hope you found this useful, but the moral to the story here is don't go all in. Always have a contingency, have some form of buffer. If you're going to take a big radical change, make sure you've got a contingency to cover your fixed costs. Okay, that will protect you from having to have massive bailout situations if things go wrong. Really important. So look at your ROI, so what you're putting into it, what's the downside. So look at the risk side of things. Really, really important to obviously work that side of things out before we jump into something like this. But I've learned a valuable lesson here. I'll never make that same mistake again. So as always, I try and take the positive from the situation, the experience. It was a very, very steep learning curve, that's for sure. So, and the final message is trust your instinct. More often than not, it sounds too good to be true. It usually is. And there's two people in my life, my wife and my operations manager. Both are females, and they have like the best gut instinct on things. I don't think I've ever proved them wrong, and they've always had a gut impression on things. More often than not, I've ignored them, and I've paid the consequence. So if you find somebody who's got a real good gut instinct, run it past people, get a second opinion before you make the plunge, because like I say, opportunities will always come, and you'll always have the next opportunity, but you can only tackle and survive so many mistakes before it has massive consequences on you and your livelihood. So, hope this has been useful. Any comments, as always, ask questions away. I'll be transparent as I can. And like, share if you think it's great value. And as always, my guarantee is I'll always respond to every comment. And if it's a larger topic, I will do a whole episode and tag you in to answer your question. So, hope you found it useful. And as always, stay positive and stay happy. I'll speak to you on the next episode.